All right, Cap. So this week from Lay Vampire, you pulled Burnt by the Sun, Ambition, Extension, and Reach. This is my I Overdid It card. And then you and Scorpio this week from Chakra Wisdom pulled Facade. Now, this one worries me a little bit, but we'll get into this. So the blessing with Burnt by the Sun. You will never know your potential unless you go beyond the limits you have set for yourself. You may not succeed, but you will know a great deal more about yourself than you do now. And it says begin with baby steps and persist. Working with this card says that you must be mindful of what is safe and wise for you at this time with the skills and the training that you have. You have a way to go before your changes are made. And it talks about how patience and hard work are both priorities for now. You know, your goal is still within reach. It's just that you're overdoing it. And I worry with Facade that you're overdoing it because you feel obligated to do it for somebody else. And that's because of, what the inspiration talks about. Now, the very first quote for this card says, "This isn't who I am." The inspiration says, if you are unhappy in your relationships, you may be relating to others through a false sense of duty. Give up being something that you're not. But then the personal question asks, what have I done to heal my childhood pain? The key ideas are disassociating from yourself, reclaiming your life, and healing childhood pain. Now, for some of you, you may be trying to overdo it when it comes to that. But I do think that for a lot of you, the reason why Facade is showing up and, overdoing it here and getting burnt. All right, Cap, here we go. Here's the energy coming through. You and Sag now. So the Two of Coins as a signifier, what is it that you feel like you're needing to balance out? I've always said with the Two of Coins, right, you have the ability to be flexible and to manage all the things that are happening. Whether it has to do with finances, work, your passions, balancing all these different things out, you're able to do this. But, when do you get to the point where things drop? I worry about that when I see that as the signifier, but it's suggesting that, there are things that you are trying to balance out in your life right now. And in the past, the Magician, and just between the two, it looks really good. Now, the Magician is the past coming through, manifesting some cool ass shit, which is great. But it is saying that you have the skills and the tools available to manifest the things that you want. It's there. And it Burnt by the Sun said, you have to be mindful of what is safe for you to do with the skills and the training that you have. You don't want to be overdoing it here, but the Magician is suggesting that there needs to be confidence. There needs to be confidence in yourself and the things that you are trying to manifest in your life. But, the Magician, too, you're thinking big here. This is no small fry decision that's happening here with the Two of Coins. This is something that's major. Oh, Cap, what is happening? In the present, the Nine of Swords. So there are some, bad thoughts, bad thinking, regret. There's despair. Your mental thoughts are in a really bad spot here with the Nine of Swords. And, I've had questions before about how I relate this to the Three of Swords because the two are tied. It is cause and effect. This is the effect. And for some of you, there are some really bad thoughts around possibly a heartbreaking situation that, you're dealing with right now in the present moment. The thoughts are not in the right spot. And for some of you, especially with Burnt by the Sun sitting here, the feeling just between the two, looking at the Nine of Swords and the Magician, is regret over not being able to manifest something. But you're still trying to manage it out here with the Two of Coins. Future conditions. So, what I like about this with the Two of Wands is that you start moving into a spot here. Again, you're looking at decisions. Deciding on what action you need to take moving forward. But, my problem is those bad thoughts need to be cleared up before you make any action. because you can't expect to see your world, manifest the way you want it to if you're hanging on to really bad negative thoughts. That has to be cleared up here. But the Two of Wands is suggesting that in future conditions, you're looking to move forward. And you're making those decisions now on how to do that. How do I manage this out? How do I move forward from this? Your best path to follow, the Seven of Swords. Wow. Wow. Now, the very first thing that I got from this is that whatever you do decide to do and however you do decide to move forward, the Seven of Swords is your best path to follow, is telling you that, maybe you shouldn't reveal everything that you're planning on doing. And I don't know why that was the immediate thing that came up for me. I do say with this card, it's not just about sketchy, low down, behavior and sneaky shit. It's also about somebody who is not revealing everything just yet. There's a reason why you're keeping your cards close to your chest. And it may be because here there may be some really bad negative thinking. You're looking to move forward from it. You're juggling out things here with the Two of Coins and trying to manage this. But I think that if things have not worked out for you before, I kind of get the feeling that the reason why it didn't is because, again, there is that sense of doing something for somebody else that wasn't really true to who you were. And maybe now, with the Seven of Swords showing up here, you're going to have to, keep things on the down low. Like, not really talk about what you're planning on doing here. Especially if you have outside influences that are affecting the way that you're thinking. Whew, okay. In your environment, the Three of Coins. And it looks good. It does. It looks good here. It's just, what are you working toward here? What are you working toward? The mental thinking needs to be cleared up. Don't think negatively about yourself, and certainly don't harbor negative thoughts that are being put on you by other people as well. The Three of Coins in your environment it's working. It's working with not just somebody toward a common goal here, but it's also about showing off your talents and your skills. And there is recognition. And when you're talking about the Magician and manifesting some cool ass shit, the Three of Coins is definitely the way to go. Again, training, skills, right? Working, patience, and practice. And you get there. You get there, and there is recognition there as well. But be careful on what you're working toward here, because you have negative thinking that is surrounding it. You don't want to be sabotaging yourself either before you start to see the results. Oh, wow. In your hopes and your fears, the Hierophant. Woo, okay, so now the Hierophant, there's a couple of different feelings that I have around this. First of all, when you're looking at the Hierophant, it is about traditions. Doing things in the traditional way, or doing things in a way that works for you. The other thing here is you're talking about spirituality and being a little bit more spiritually grounded. But the Hierophant is, again, one of the few cards that talks about the group. That's where conformity comes in. But I feel like with the Hierophant and looking at the Three of Coins, you may have the potential here to work with somebody that may be helping you get a higher understanding of why things are happening the way they are. Because, again, the Hierophant being attached to the fives. I've always said this. When you're looking at the fives, first of all, it's really hard changes that are happening. You're in the middle of what is going on. You start with the beginning with the ace, you get to the five, things start to change, and it's always the difficult shit. And it happens right in the middle of the progress that you're making before things go into completion. When you hit that point, it can get frustrating. And this is kind of where, the idea came from with the Hierophant, and I can see this and feel it when it came to like the creation of the deck, especially when you're talking back in those days, you're shaking your fist up at the sky going, what the fuck? Why is this shit happening? And we would seek spiritual understanding. And that is where the depiction of the Pope comes into play, because that was the dominant religion or faith at the time. Now, for some of you, it can definitely represent a person that's coming through here to give you some guidance, that is working with you toward the things that you are manifesting, or maybe teaching you some new skills here with the Magician that you're putting into practice. But as a hope, it's getting a little bit more spiritually grounded. But I still do think that there is something going on here where you need to be quiet about the things that you're planning on doing. And it's not that you're intentionally trying to be manipulative, because again, the position that it's in, it's Spirit's advice to you. There's a reason here why you need to be quiet about what you're planning on doing. Man. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And then the outcome, the Seven of Wands. All right. Now, man, Cap, I'm telling you, I don't know what it is with your readings, but they get deep with me. You get to a point here coming out of this where you start standing up for yourself. The Seven of Wands, for me, I've always said this card, and I love it to death. I'm not taking any more shit. This is how I feel. This is where I stand. You get to a point here where you are defending yourself. But, again, with the Seven of Wands, you have the higher ground here. You're using your voice. But it's like, before you get there, you're going to have to be, a little bit quiet about the things that you're planning on doing, because you don't want to sabotage it. And it may be coming from an outside source. And I kind of feel like that with some of you. Now, for, a lot of you, that Nine of Swords is going to represent some really bad negative thinking that you need to clear up here. You don't want to be sabotaging yourself either, But I do like where you come out here, especially with the Hierophant and the Three of Coins. It looks fantastic. It's just there are some things that, you're balancing out here. You're looking at the best way to move forward. You start to get to a point here where you're using your voice and you're letting people know, this is what I want. This is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. But that Nine of Swords needs to get cleared up. Especially with the Three of Coins being there, because it looks really good, especially with the Magician being there. But, I understand now why Burnt by the Sun is there. But I do think that for some of you, Facade is saying that you need to stop doing things because you feel obligated to do it for somebody else, because they may be giving you those negative thoughts. Whew. All right, Cap, we're going to take a look at the soul trees to see what other messages we can get for you guys. But I do love where you come out here. You may have to be quiet for a little bit, but where you come out at looks really good, where you start swinging here with the Seven of Wands. And then inspiration, and both of those for me point back to the Hierophant here. Getting a new inspiration here, and the changes that are happening, right, with the Five, right, the Hierophant and the Fives. So something within you definitely is emerging here. And it's going to cause some change. But there's also some inspiration that may be being given to you, and it looks really good. New inspiration. Especially if, you're tired of being burnt and overdoing things. But it looks really good, Cap. All right, we're going to take a look at Whispers of Love to see what messages we can get for you guys as far as attracting love into your life. Love who you are. Hell yeah. You are a divine and wonderful person, deserving of all the wonderful things that life has to offer. Damn straight. And then express love through gifts. Giving a small token to someone expresses your love to them. Very beautiful. And that is so true. It's those small little things that let people know that you know them and you do care about them, right? So, and it doesn't have to be anything expensive. I always say that with people. It can be just something small. But definitely love who you are. You know, you are a divine being and you are deserving of the beautiful things in your life. All right, Cap. So there's something that you're like trying to balance out in your life right now. And it looks like what it is has to do with the things that you're manifesting, you know, and I think that you've been overdoing it because of a sense of obligation to somebody else who is like creating some negative thoughts here. Because I do feel like this is connected to an outside source. And the more I look at the Hierophant, the more I kind of feel like the fear here would be that, you know, the person or situation or whatever it is that's causing this negative thinking here is like trying to get you to conform and continue to be something that you're not. You know, but on the other hand, again, with the Three of Pentacles underneath it, it feels like, you know, that better spiritual understanding, especially when it comes to having a little bit more confidence in yourself with the things that you are manifesting, because these two look beautiful together. It's just there are other things that you're having to balance out here, and I really do think that Spirit is saying you got to be quiet. Like, you can't reveal everything that you're doing, especially if you have like an outside oppressive like source that's making you think bad and feel bad. You know, I'm not seeing a lot of emotional backing behind that, but I don't like the negative thinking, especially if you're looking forward, you know. But where you come out at is what I love the most here, right? The Seven of Wands. I'm not taking any more shit. This is how I feel. This is where I stand. This is what I'm going to do. And there's nothing you can do about it, is basically what it feels like. Now, as far as the soul trees, something from within you is emerging and it's going to cause that change. But there's going to be new inspiration. And I love it. And I think it's perfect. Now, in terms of whispers of love, love who you are and express love through gifts. Love who you are. Hell yeah, you are a divine being. You know, and as far as expressing love through gifts, it's so important that, you know, when you have people in your life that you love, that you give them those small things that show them, first of all, you know who they are, but that you're also thinking about them and that you care about them, you know. And then for some of you, you have to be open to receiving those gifts as well, you know. But I do get like this heavy feeling here that you're trying to balance out what you feel obligated to do for somebody else and what you are trying to manifest for yourself.